I'll now proceed with the demonstration for one of the options in the main menu of the clinic management system, which is the Manage Transactions. So upon entering a number here, a user has to put an appropriate digit which corresponds to the available choices. When a user input is not a number, let's say for example, manage is entered, the system displays an error message to notify the user which says that what was entered is not a valid number. The user is then asked to re-enter a choice. Now let's say that the user did enter a number like 5. But as we can see here, there is no option that corresponds with that number. For this, the system also displays an error message and asks the user to enter a choice again. So the same error message appears when the entered choice is a negative value. When a user finally enters a valid number, for this demo I'll be entering the number 3, and this opens or displays the Transactions module menu. There are also error messages applied in this menu. So if we enter a string, example create, then a user that does not correspond any of the given choices, and also a negative value. When a user finally enters a valid number for this menu, let's start with option 1. A message is displayed here, creating new transaction, and please select a client for this transaction. So we'll have to select a valid client ID from the list of registered active clients. Let's say that the user input is 0005, which if we look here, we may think that it is the client ID for Mr. Sean Piconada. However, if we enter this, an error message is displayed saying client with ID 0005 doesn't exist in the system and brings the user back to the Transactions module menu. This is because in the system, client ID follows a specific format that includes the year and a 4-digit unique ID. So for us to be able to select Mr. Piconada from the list, we'll have to enter his valid client ID, which is 2026-0005. After entering, the system asks the user to select a service. The options are in numeric values again, so error messages will be displayed if the input is invalid. And the system will keep asking to select service number. I'll now enter a valid input. And then the system asks the user to select a dentist to perform the chosen service. There is a list here of dentists that specializes in teeth cleaning, and the dentist ID is what needs to be entered. So if we put invalid values such as string, an error message is displayed, the transaction gets cancelled, and the system brings the user back to the Transactions module menu. Now let's try entering an ID that's not in the choices. We can see here that an error message is displayed and the transaction is cancelled again, bringing us back to the menu. The same thing will happen for every invalid input. So I'll now enter a dentist ID from the selection. There is a message here, transaction initialized, and the system asks if the user wants to add another service. The valid inputs here are Y or N and yes or no. If a user tries to enter a number or a negative value, an error message is displayed and the system asks the same question again. Let's now enter yes. For this one, I'll enter a service which price is per tooth. So example, tooth extractions, which is number 4, then enters a valid dentist ID. The user will be asked to enter the number of teeth for the specific service. Just like earlier, if a user tries to enter invalid values for this input, an error message will be displayed and the system asks for a new number to be entered. I'll now enter a valid input, and the system displays a success message. If the user is done and will not select any additional service, let's enter no for this one. So the transaction is finalized, and the official receipt of that specific transaction will be displayed along with its details. The transactions module menu is displayed again, and users can create another transaction or choose another option from this menu. Let's now try view all transactions history. Similar to the create new transaction, if a user tries to enter a string, a number that's not in the choices, or a negative value, error messages will be displayed. So to continue, I'll put number 2. Upon entering, a message printing transaction history is displayed, followed by the table of all recorded transactions. And if transactions by specific dentist wants to be viewed, the user needs to enter 3 from the selection. The list of registered clients will be displayed, and the system asks that the employee ID to be entered. If the user enters invalid input like the ones I showed earlier, error messages will also be displayed. So I'll now select Dr. Alden Richards here with his employee ID 0003. His transaction history will be displayed. But if, for example, we can see that Dr. Chris Evans is archived and we select him using his employee ID, no transactions will be displayed and for his transaction history. Almost the same process happens for the view transactions by specific client. After entering choice number 4 from the menu, the list of all registered clients will be displayed and client ID is asked to be entered. Again, if we put invalid inputs, error message will be displayed saying that the entered client ID doesn't exist. I'll now enter 2026-0005 and the system will display the transaction history for the specific client. But since what was displayed in the earlier list are all registered clients, which means this may include the ones that are archived. For example, let's select client with ID 2026-0007. The system will display that there are no transactions found for that specific client. So finally, for the last one in this menu, entering the number 0 will bring the user back to the main menu. So that's all for the demonstration of the managed transactions.